know, they can make it. We have made it from the seats before, but it is easier here because sometimes the cameras struggle to pick them up. So I would encourage members to just come and make the declaration here. That's the thing that I think it'll be easier from a visual perspective.
All right.
Okay.
No, excellent.
And if you set the tone, then the tone will be followed.
There are big bosses here.
Testing podium mic 1 2 2 1 2 2. Testing speaker mic 1 2 2 1 2 2. See, keep it. Then keep it in. Then no one can switch the mics on. Overrides everybody. Then she's active. And make a statement.
Jadi, Madam Speaker,
We'll now have a moment of silent prayer and meditation. May we be seated? Order, honorable members. The first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip. The Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I move that the House, notwithstanding Rule 47, which provides for the sequence of proceedings, resolve that the sequence of proceedings will be reflected on the order paper as determined by the Program Committee for the remainder of this annual session. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? The objections I've not seen, and therefore the motion has been agreed to. Our first item on the order paper is the ministerial statement by the Minister of Water and Sanitation on water security in the country. I now recognize Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Naki Mamesi, the Watermeis. The water girl, Babe Somanzi. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, honorable members of this august House, fellow South Africans, Dumelang, Molweni, Huyemore, good morning, Dimachironi, Sanbonani, Sialocha. Right to water is enshrined in the Constitution. The right to water and calls for government to take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization to the right to water, which is a basic human right. The constitutional responsibility of water, the national government is responsible for water resource management. It also develops national water resource infrastructure. Honorable members, as you know and you are aware that we build dams, we build canals, we build water reservoirs, we build water treatment plant. That is the mandate of the national department represented by the Department of Water and Sanitation. Water supply and sanitation services are a function over municipalities have executive authority in terms of Section 156 of the Constitution, read together with Schedule 4, Part B, and the relevant provisions of the Municipal Infrastructures Act. The raw water supply, we are responsible for the raw water. The water boards buy raw water from us. They treat that raw water. They sell raw water to municipalities. Municipalities provide to citizens. Raw water is an untreated water. That supply is currently approximately in the balance. I want to assure South Africans and the citizens of this country that we have enough water. The balance with existing demand on a national scale, but there are localized deficits in the supply of water, such as Gauteng and some parts of KZN. However, water availability in South Africa could deteriorate rapidly as supply contracts and demands escalates due to economic growth, population growth, urbanization, inefficient use, including increasing physical losses in municipal distribution systems, degradation of wetlands, and the impacts of climate change, as well as heat wave. We are not trying to run away from our responsibility, but the responsibility of municipalities is clearly defined. Delays in the implementation of surface water, as we reported during our budget vote on the phase 2 of Lesotho Highlands water, were awarded in 2023. That is part of us augmenting the existing water capacity in the country. And as well as the Umkomazi. A week ago, I was in Umkomazi, and that project is underway, and it is going to augment some parts of KZN with water, Ugu, eThekwini, and other surrounding municipalities. We have also similarly funding issue which has delayed the construction of the Ntabelanga Dam on Umzimvubu River has been resolved. You know that these mega projects are not funded through the fiscus. We go off budget, and TCTA, as part of our entity, it goes out to financial markets to secure funds, and now the funds are secured. DWS and TCTA are currently implementing 14 major national water resource infrastructure, which we have tabled during the budget vote. The Lesotho Highlands, Halzemir. You know, when I talk about Halzemir, that is the state-of-the-art dam, which is competing in the world. You know, when you look at that dam, it ends amapiano kanje. Shayang amapiano hambit. Shayang amapiano. Sifaka mas it amapiano. Amapiano. That is the state of the art. That cannot be seen anywhere except in South Africa. Except in South Africa, through the ANC-led government. Honorable members, however, there are limits to which amanzi afika ahamba ngesipilwe yaniziqonda nina ke lento ngoba niyazifikela niziqonda uqala uwathathe ku resource uwafaka ku resource uwadistribute uwashaye kanje aphuma ngene ebantwini. However, there are limits to which South Africa can keep building dams. We can build dams up to a particular extent. Mamela, Lucky, and go prasalo.
Order. Honorable Minister, allow the Speaker to manage the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. We are already harnessing approximately 75% of our utilized surface water resource, and the remaining opportunities for capturing surface water in large dams are very expensive. Broadening of South Africa's water resource mix is therefore critical for water security. Ha re sebediseng metsi ka makgethe, re tsebe hore metsi hana o dula a le teng ha re sa wa sebedise hantle. In addition to these measures to increase supply of raw water, we also need to implement measures to reduce the demand for water. It is also fundamental that we must avoid shortage of water for the future. South Africans need to change their behavior and treat water like it is a scarce resource that we have. This means that municipalities must fix leaks in their water distribution system. We cannot afford to be throwing away almost half of the water that is supplied to municipalities through leaks. The average per capita is something that I say every day, and I will say it again here today. The average, the South Africans, we ourselves, who are over-consuming water, we're using 218 per capita per day as against the international standard and norm, which is 173. Therefore, it needs us to reduce consumption. South Africa is one of the 30 most water-scarce countries. Water supply disruptions in Gauteng and some parts of KZN. Honorable members, I wish to emphasize that the water supply disruption currently experienced by Gauteng has nothing to do with drought. It has nothing to do with the closure of Lesotho water tunnel, but it has everything to do with water management resource. That is what is fundamental here. They are caused by rapid growth in the demand for water, because these are big cities and the population is growing, and the influx of people from all corners. Remember, Johannesburg is an economic hub of the country, and everybody go to Johannesburg. However, The leaks are in turn as a result of under-budgeting for infrastructure maintenance by municipalities. Honorable members, we must also ensure that they disconnect illegal connection, and we must all fight vandalism of water infrastructure. It will only be possible for Rand Water and Umgeni Utukela water boards to abstract more water at the Val and at Umgeni water system once these major new dams projects are complete. Currently, the water that they are abstracting is more than enough to give to all South Africans, but South Africans must be able to control the water usage. One of the key ways to reduce demand is for municipality, as I've said, to fix the leaks. Gauteng is losing water at about 45%. In addition, we must also roll out awareness to residents and business around Gauteng and KZN. We do appreciate the fact that there are still challenges of our people unable to access water, especially in the rural areas. Our responsibility is to build the water resource, but it is the responsibility of municipality to reticulate that water from our resource. Coupled with this awareness campaign, we must ensure that when we put stricter water use restrictions, they are enforced by municipalities. The current closure, as I said, it has nothing to do with the current situation. And I want to assure the citizens around Free State, part of Northern Cape, Gauteng, and part of Northwest, that we have enough capacity storage of water for the next 6 months, but that water, because of the closure of the tunnel, might take us up to 9 months, but we're not gonna go to 9 months. Already we are left with 5 months, 1 month is gone, and the maintenance is happening very well. For the same reason, the fact that the level of water in Val Dam has fallen to approximately 33% is not a cause of water supply disruption in Gauteng. Once the level reach 18%, that is where we're supposed to panic. And when our water level reach 18%, we're going to release water from other backup dams like Sterkfontein. And we have already made community aware that they will see water running down very fast, because we need about 3 days to release water from backup dams to come and fill up Val Dam. So we are not in crisis. We do have water, but let us use water sparingly. The blue, the green, and the no-drop water that was issued by the department in 2023 has since seen the decline, sharp decline over the last 10 years in terms of indicators such as quality of water. But water in South Africa is safe to drink. You go to other countries, by the time you land at the airport, you are told that water from the tap is not drinkable, but our water is drinkable. The decline in the delivery of municipal water services has taken place despite high levels of support. We are supporting municipality through WISI grant, through RIPI grant. They are supported through MIG. They are supported through MISA, and therefore it's just water management issues that the leadership of municipalities must prevail over their officials. Honorable Speaker and honorable members, the solution is not for national government to take over municipality. Ndiyayazi bakhona bazawuza apha bacinga basawuthatha omasipala, abathathwa omasipala banikwa support itsho constitution, baya reinforcewa, and that is what we have done. Nizoyitshintsha xa ningobani nizabe niphi, soze nitshintshe wa constitution ke nina, sawutshintsha nina niphume apha kule ndlu niyohlala ngapha enkandla niphume. These reforms are required to ensure that municipality water services become professional and financially sustainable. Honorable Speaker, increasing access.
Order, honorable members.
Increasing access to water services. Finally, there are still areas of the country, I agree and admit here and accept, that don't have water access. While access to a basic level of water services has improved, but there are still people without water. DWS is prioritizing projects which address the remaining access backlogs for funding from the regional water bulk infrastructure as well as from WISIC. A drop of water counts. Those receiving water, user pay, must be implemented. Let us all use water sparingly. This is a precious resource that must be conserved. Nina anizuchinja kwa constitution. Nina sauchinja nina niphume nina nikhokelwa ngumanyi ehamba phambili niphume. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Nxumalo.
Somlomo eParlamente namalunga ahloniphekile eParlamente ngiyanibingelela egameni lomkhonto wesizwe phathi. Ngifisa ukuphendula ungqongqoshe okade elapha ngaphambili uma echaza ngalamanzi enze nje ase Hazel Dam. Agcina ngokwenze njalo ngqongqoshe angafiki kule mphakathi eyakhele iHazel Dam. State of the art impela kodwa ke awafiki la kufanele khona. Ileyo nkinga ke ekufuneka siyiveze. Kubalekile ukuthi sichaze ukuthi sikhuluma ngani uma sikhuluma nge-water security eSouth Africa. I-water security la sikhuluma ngamanzi agcinwayo ezweni, angagcini ngokugcina ezweni, sikhuluma ngokuphakelwa kwamanzi, sikhuluma ngamanzi aphuzekayo, amanzi ahlanzekile, i-water security ke leyo. Asikwazi ke ngqongqoshe neParlamente lonke ukuthi sihlukanise umasipala no Department of Water and Sanitation ngoba lezi zinto zombili ziyasebenzelana. Kuneyingqinamba ke ezimbalwa ezikhona la ezikhanda lesisimo samanzi ukuthi indaba yakhona ingalungi. Okokuqala i-maintenance ye-infrastructure sinenkinga kakhulu kulokho, imali ayenele efakwa lapho. Okunye ngqongqoshe engifuna ukukubalula inkinga yokuthi kunenkohlakalo eqhubekayo. Ungqongqoshe uthe mayikhuluma la ngaphambili wathi akunankinga yamanzi eSouth Africa. Ngiyakuphikisa lokho ngqongqoshe ngoba sinenkinga yamanzi eSouth Africa. Kunenkinga yesomiso eSouth Africa. Imvula azenele azini ngalendlela esifuna ngayo. Ingakho ke sinalenkinga yamanzi okungokunye kwakhona. Inkinga yamanzi ngqongqoshe ijule kakhulu ngoba njoba sikhuluma ngecorruption ukuthi komasipala ngizokwenza nje sibonele ngomunye umasipala la khona kukhishwe imali engu-17 million ukuthi kuzokwakhiwa idamu. Lelo damu lelo lagcina lingakhiwanga lingalungiswanga kwagcina imali yakhona iphelele emoyeni u-17 million. Omunye umasipala icorruption yenza kakhona kuthathwe injini komunye umasipala ephehla amanzi yayiswa komunye umasipala yafike yapendwa leyo injini leyo kwathiwa intsha umasipala wakhipha amamiliyoni amarandi. Inkinga ke ezikhona ezithreatenisha i-security yamanzi eSouth Africa. Kokunye uthola ukuthi kuthathwa amanzi amapayipi afakwe phansi kodwa uthola ukuthi lawo mapayipi awawakhipha amanzi ngoba vele inhloso ukuthi kuqhutsheke kudliwa imali. Izona inkinga ke esibhekana nazo lezo ezithreatenisha i-security yamanzi eSouth Africa. Manje ke sithi ke njengeqembu lomkhonto wesizwe siyanxusa ukuthi aqiniswe imali, akufakwe imali eningi noma eyenele ekuthenini i-infrastructure ayibhekelelwe, amapayipi njengoba kuvuza amapayipi ibhekelelwe. Njengoba siphinda futhi njengeqembu lomkhonto wesizwe sithi ukuze lento esiyibona ejozini ingenzeki yokuthi idamu likhona kodwa umphakathi eseduzayo wathola amanzi, again that is threatening i-security yamanzi eSouth Africa. Sithi ke lapho sicela ukuthi amadamu onke abuyele kuhulumeni, awalawule lawo madamu lawo uhulumeni. Ukuze abantu bezokwazi ukusizakala. Siyaphinda futhi njoba siyesibone kwenye inkatho uthola ukuthi kunebhunu elithize elizokhanda idamu bese livimba umfula. Ezinye zezizathu lezo esenza ukuthi sithi ngempela siyadinga ukuthi amadamu awabuyele kuhulumeni. Iqembu lomkhonto wesizwe okunye likubalulayo lithi akwenzeke ukuthi lenkinga ekhona esichazayo ukuthi amanzi awasabalaliswa ngendlela elinganayo indawo ngeindawo, okuyinto leyo ethreatenisha isecurity yamanzi eSouth Africa. Uyabona nje abantu basemakhaya basemalokishini sebeyazi ukuthi enyangeni cishe mhlawumbe kuba u12 days bethola amanzi bese kuthi lokho kunye kulandela abawatholi, kodwa ke la kuhlala khona umntakabani ayi amanzi khona nje inqaphanqapha maningi. La kuhlala khona ke abahlonipheki la. Yes, so ke
honorable members.
Ileyo nkinga ke ekhona, ingakho ke njengeqembu lomkhonto wesizwe abantu ngendlela okuyiyo minister laba basemakhaya nabasemalokishini akekho noyihluphayo kubatshela ukuthi namhlanje ke kusasa amanzi azobe ngekho. Umuntu uvuka
babungumani.
Ngiyathokoza.
Sesikuzwile mntaka. Honorable SJ Moore.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Public health surgeries cancelled, hospitals struggling to maintain basic hygiene, human beings drinking from animal waterholes, communities without adequate water and sanitation since the dawn of our democracy, billions of taxpayers' funds squandered through corruption in essential projects, the South African Human Rights Commission compelling local governments to fulfill their constitutional responsibilities. Municipalities owe billions and counting to our water boards. Honourable members, these were the news headlines from a year ago, and yet here we are again, facing the same challenges. To South Africans watching, I ask you, do you want to continue living with the denial of your rights, or will you demand accountability and change? Fellow citizens, 47% of our water treatment systems are in a critical or poor state. Only 14% of our water treatment systems are in good or excellent condition, which is the basic standard for all of our plants. 68% of our sanitation treatment systems are in high or critical risk, and we lose, depending on who you speak to, 41% of our water to leaks. While we have emerged battered from 15 years of power cuts, we may not survive water shedding. People will suffer from dehydration and unsafe drinking water. Livestock will die from the same causes. As climate change advances, bringing unpredictable weather patterns, our country's food security will further decline in a nation where millions already don't get 3 full meals a day. Hospitals and schools may close, impacting our entire society. In fact, Madam Minister, I understand the Constitutional Court is currently not operating because of a lack of water. Right now, I was invited to go visit today. Honourable members, this cannot be the South Africa we envision. Our Bill of Rights, hard won through the struggles of our people, cannot be made hollow by our failure to meet the basics. As a new father, I feel a profound responsibility to ensure that my daughter and the children of our nation inherit a country where they can thrive, where their basic rights are upheld, and I'm certain parents across South Africa feel exactly the same. The Auditor General's recent findings on our municipalities reveal a disturbing trend. Only 13% received a clean audit, while the rest faced significant material findings. Municipalities could not collect sufficient revenue, partially due to neglected infrastructure, and the funds collected were poorly managed, affecting their ability to deliver quality services. The reality is that services like water and sanitation have become luxuries in our economy, where the haves and the have-nots grow further apart. But let us remember what we are entitled to. We are entitled to quality, reliable drinking water. We are entitled to humane sanitation facilities. We are entitled to live in clean communities, not environments filled with raw sewage. We are entitled to see our taxes and rates managed effectively, contributing to the upkeep of essential infrastructure. Local governments hold executive authority over water and sanitation services, but they cannot be left to operate without oversight. As the Minister rightly acknowledged, this water crisis is largely self-inflicted by municipal mismanagement. Minister, you know which municipalities are failing our people. Let's name them. Let's hold them accountable and take the delinquent ones to court if necessary, and show South Africans we mean business. Fellow South Africans, while we deal with these municipal shortcomings, we still have an economy and lives to protect. The solution is not a simple national takeover of municipal responsibilities, but a cooperative approach with a stringent oversight. National government, working with the Presidency, the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, the Department of Water and Sanitation, and the National Treasury, must act in unison to save South Africa from disaster. The Minister proposed measures like stronger water use restrictions, incentives for better municipal management, ring fencing of water revenues for infrastructure, and newly licensing requirements for water providers to ensure accountability. The Democratic Alliance support these measures. But the promises alone won't fix our water system. We need to see enforcement, transparency, and accountability at every level. And to you, fellow citizens of South Africa, remember that you deserve better. Every dry tap, every sewage leak, and every undelivered service is a failure of government. In 2 years, you have a chance to choose change, choose pragmatism, choose solutions, choose leaders who are focused on restoring basic services. Honourable Speaker, the challenges before us are immense, but not insurmountable. With focused leadership, solutions-driven governance, and a collective effort from national to local levels, we can still change course. South Africa's water future depends on it, and so does the health and dignity of our people. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mosala.
Let me take this opportunity and greet our fearless Commander-in-Chief, President Cyril Julius Malema. Salutation to the indomitable leadership of economic freedom fighters, our dedicated fighters, and the masses yearning for economic emancipation. And to the countless South Africans who wake up each day to dry taps and empty promises, Minister. Comrades, we stand here today to expose the failures of a system that have turned our people's right to water into marriage in the desert of governance, incompetence. The minister's statement is a torrent of empty promises. As dry as the taps in Hammanskraal and Qwaqwa, the minister speaks of constitutional rights while our people drink water from muddy streams. The minister boasts of raw water security while Gauteng and KZN face crippling water shortages. This is not mismanagement, Minister. This is a crime against humanity. Let me address you, Minister. You boast of 90% access to basic water, yet millions of people still wake up to dry taps and broken promises. You speak of 218 liters per capita. What a fantasy. Our mothers and children are rationing every drop, while the elite fill their swimming pools. You trumpet 100 billion for dams, while our township pipes leak like sieves. Where is the investment in our community? Minister, you preach behavior change, while mines guzzle millions of liters unchecked. This is not governance. This is water apartheid. The minister speaks of raw water security, yet admits to localized deficit in Gauteng and KZN. These aren't just statistics, Minister. These are real people suffering real thirst. You claim to have addressed delays in water projects, but where is the water in our taps? You boast on implementing 14 major water infrastructure projects, but our people are still thirsty. Minister, you talk of diversifying the water resource mix, but where are the results? The water supply disruption in Gauteng and KZN are blamed rapid growth and municipal leaks. But who's responsible for planning and maintenance? The buck stop with this government. The minister admits that municipal water services has declined sharply over the last 10 years. This is a damning indictment of your leadership. Comrades, the EFF bring not empty words, but the revolutionary flood to wash away this failing system. We will nationalize every drop of water in this land. People's Water Committee will rise in every community, taking control from incompetent officials. No more bureaucrats in air-conditioned offices deciding who gets water and who doesn't. We will redirect billions from corrupt projects to fix leaks and build real infrastructure for our people, like what we are doing in Ekurhuleni. Our MMC is there. We are busy repairing leaks. Emergency water distribution will follow to every area left high and dry by this government. Those responsible for water mismanagement will be held accountable, their assets turned into public water points. The time for polite requests has evaporated. We don't beg for water, we will fight for it. Join the EFF as we unleash a tsunami of change across the parched land. To the government and the unity of failure, we say your time has run dry. The EFF is coming, and we bring with a flood of justice, a deluge of change, and an ocean of hope for our people. Water for all, land for all, economic freedom now. Minister, ujula ubulela mo every day, ubulela ka di masipala, gore wena you are not in charge of the municipalities, wena ufelela mo godimo ka di dam. So, Minister, batho ba batla metsi, le re buditse ka the DDM, le re buditse ka intergovernmental relation, what is happening? Madam ga re thushe ka selo, ge batho ba sena metsi. Ifava to metsi, Minister. So, every time you respond on media, you are telling us that when you are just building dams. Where are the water? Where is the water to the people? Batho ba bo rena ba batla metsi ke fela se se re senyaka go tu go fedile ke phetho. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sithole. Order, honorable members, let's allow Honorable Sithole.
Honorable Speaker, the United Nations define water security as a capacity of a population to safeguard sustainable access to sufficient quantities of acceptable quality water for sustainable livelihoods, human being, and socio-economic development. Honorable Minister, this definition emphasizes the collective nature of the responsibility. Therefore, a comprehensive social impact component of water security must unite all South Africans. Our view as the IFP has been that a failure to allocate infrastructure, development and maintenance resources where they are most needed and to address the huge backlog in providing basic service infrastructure has led to a crisis. To address water security, the IFP believes that we should ensure that the water resources are protected and preserved while strengthening the regulatory framework for water quality and safety. Secondly, all municipalities should be resources financially and through capacity building to sustain, provide clean water. Lastly, immediately after embarked on a national water audit, repair damaged water infrastructure and invest in modern infrastructure and technology to improve the efficiency of our water system. The IFP has previously reiterated that fat South Africans is a water-stressed, water-scarce country, and we must not treat this crisis with complacency. Honorable Minister, into esicelayo Minister, sicela ukuthi ukube nomhlangano nomasipala amanzi achithekayo amamasipala abangaaccounti kuwo maningi kakhulu. Emaningi nje futhi kuba yichilo mangizwa ilunga le-EFF lithi ekululeni uyaccount umuntu ophethe amanzi khona. Ungabona amanzi agxazayo lapha ekululeni. Ngenhlanhla ke sihlala khona uma efuna ukuthi ngimprove lokho asho simthathe simuse khona. Amanzi njengamanje akekho umuntu owanakile. Sicela ukuthi minister kanye no minister wezikagesi ke nehle nize phansi sizoncedana ukuthi amanzi abuyele endaweni yayo. Ngiyathokoza.
Siyathokoza. PA, Patriotic Alliance. The PA system is not working. FF Plus.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the Minister is correct to say that water consumption in South Africa on an average per person is higher than the global average. And we are a water-scarce country. But whilst we all know that water is being lost due to pipe leakages, and more than 40% of purified water is lost in that fashion, we cannot say that it is due to people wasting water and using water more than that is creating this problem. It cannot be deduced to that, as we must first look at the water that we are losing, the fact that infrastructure is a problem, but also, Minister, the fact that if you go to state hospitals, if you go to schools, if you go to government department buildings, water is being wasted and lost there, taps running, and all of that happening under the watch of government. Then we can't blame the people. Then we should first start there. Because, Honourable Speaker, the people of towns like Matlwangtlwang in the Free State has already reached day zero. They are without water for more than 14 days. There's no hope. There has been certain interventions with boreholes, but the department has failed to provide the necessary equipment. People are without water in the municipality of Mukaka, in municipalities like Machabeng, in towns like Bethel, in Mpumalanga, and that cannot be said is because of higher consumption and people wasting water. It's because of water being lost due to infrastructure problems. It is due to water or money owed to water boards and water shedding and being implemented because of municipalities owing money to water boards. We need urgent intervention, Honourable Speaker, because day zero is a reality. And without electricity, we can. We can get by. We did for many, many years. We survived load shedding, but we can't survive without water, and we need urgent intervention. We welcome your optimism, Minister, and your enthusiasm, but we have to acknowledge the reality that there's a crisis and then start with government departments wasting water and start implementing water-saving measures
Thank
in
you,
our
Honourable Member.
departments.
Your
I
time
thank you.
is up. Thank you. Action SA, Honourable Kobe.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, South Africa is in a deep water crisis, which our minister has rightfully admitted that is self-inflicted. The Blue Dot report lays it bare for us that 50% of our drinking water fails safety standards, and an additional 47% leaks away as non-revenue water due to crumbling infrastructure. These are signs of chronic governance failures and absent leadership. This impacts citizens across South Africa, from Johannesburg to Guyana villages, Val farmers, and industries in Guga. Our nation cannot function on dry taps, Minister. This is an indictment on the ANC-led government, from municipal joyriders to national leaders who shirk responsibility. The crisis is here, Minister. The lights are out and there's no more hiding. The failure to align infrastructure with population growth is evident, and I saw this firsthand during this constituency week at Sechero Water Purification Plant. It's just 5 months, but it is unable to provide water to the 80,000 residents who are in constant water supply shortages. Businesses are stifled, public service is compromised, and the community is trapped in perpetual crisis of water shortages. In Makhanda, despite 400 million being spent and a water treatment being done for over 10 years, it's not operational. The town faces daily water interruptions, forcing schools and recently Rhodes University to close as the crisis escalated. The delays in the national bulk infrastructure projects, such as the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, are emblematic of incompetence and corruption. While we agree with you, Minister, that broadening our water resource remix is necessary, Action SA has very little faith in its feasibility without engineers and technicians. We need higher education institutions involved to spur innovation and research and produce young professionals for water sector careers. Without this, our ambitious plans fall into pipe dreams. South Africa's water scarcity is exacerbated by climate change, and I'm disappointed that this did not feature anywhere in your speech. We have erratic rainfall and decreasing heat impacting drinking water and food security. Ignoring these climate effects is inexcusable, and they must feature in the national water policy. Immediate, drastic interventions are required. Action SA proposes integrating the national water and sanitation into a single infrastructure entity, reallocating 5 billion spent on foreign wars and conflicts to repair domestic infrastructure, introducing punitive waterways pricing, and revising construction codes for water resilience. Above all, the Water and Sanitation Master and Sanitation Plan must be immediately implemented. Without swift action, South Africa will face an unprecedented humanitarian crisis.
Thank you. Honourable 3.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As we consider the statement of the Minister, it is the view of the ACDP that water security of our nation is threatened not only by drought, but more importantly by the efficient storing, distribution and utilization thereof. The ACDP commends the progress that has been made post-apartheid in bringing piped water to millions of predominantly black South Africans. In 2022, over 82.4% of households in the country had access to piped water, either inside their dwelling or inside their yards, according to Stats SA. Clearly, the greater problem to our water security is not that South Africa is a water-scarce country, but rather that the vast majority of our municipalities, almost 50% of water purchased, is lost through leakage, broken pipes, and theft, Minister, as you've indicated in your presentation. But added to this dilemma, 59% of our municipalities were insolvent as at September 2022, and the vast majority do not invest in the basic amount required for infrastructure repairs and maintenance, including water infrastructure. In addition to that, we have water boards that are at risk of bankruptcy, and we have the water tanker mafias allegedly sabotaging water infrastructure. The ACDP is aware of the initiative to develop the National Water and Sanitation Master Plan, which is to provide a comprehensive schedule of actions needed to address present challenges, to estimate the investments required to ensure effective water resources, to improve water and sanitation delivery, as well as to facilitate effective integration, investment planning, and the implementation of actions and evaluation of achievements. But, Honourable Speaker, as we face a looming water shedding, the ACDP calls on this department to fast-track the building of desalination plants, to recycle our wastewater for agriculture use, to upscale drip irrigation to our small-scale farmers, to identify sustainable aquifers, and to make greater use of rainwater harvesting. As the ACDP, we also caution that if this department and the Minister does not address the lack of maintenance of infrastructure leading to broken or damaged pipes, then water security will become a broken pipe dream. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Nkwankwa.
Icela nami optional time, Speaker. Thank you very much.
There is no optional
Honourable
time.
members, your department minister recently presented deeply troubling statistics which revealed a sharp decline in our water quality and reliability over the past decade. It is unbelievable that almost half, or 46% of our water supply systems are now failing to meet safety standards, a shocking increase from just 5% in 2014. This decline puts countless South Africans at risk, exposing them to unsafe drinking water and serious health hazards. Our wastewater systems, too, are in a critical state of disrepair, with over 40% now in a dysfunctional state. Over 41% of our water supply is lost to leaks and inefficiencies, while municipal debts threaten to collapse our water boards, worsening the plight of our communities. Perhaps nowhere is this more evident, or this crisis more evident, than in Johannesburg, the economic hub of our nation. Our economic powerhouse faces recurrent water shortages and a deteriorating infrastructure. A data investigation by the Daily Maverick, for example, shows that Johannesburg has already had 1,604 water cuts in October and 3,318 in September. To make matters worse, the Johannesburg Water Board has been weighed down by political appointees lacking the necessary skills to manage this vital resource. In the Eastern Cape, for example, in other parts of the country, towns like Makhanda, Port Alfred, Fort Beaufort, and Gqeberha face severe water outages, with residents having to rely on bottled water to survive, with even schools and universities at times temporarily having to close, frequently due to lack of water. A recent report, Minister, by the Water Community Action Network, a network of scientists who are committed to advocating for clean, safe, and sustainable water, reveals that 11 municipalities across 6 provinces are repeat offenders, consistently failing quality tests without alerting residents. These municipalities have shown repeated E. coli contamination and should be issuing boil water alerts to protect the public. Our view is that these are not isolated cases. Other municipalities across our country continue to fail water quality standards. Every South African has a right to know the quality of water they consume. It is essential that all municipalities make monthly water quality tests publicly available. If we do not act urgently, tragedies like the one in Armanskraal, where lives were lost due to contaminated water, may become common. We demand accountability,
Thank you very much,
transparency,
member.
and capable leadership. Thank you.
Honorable Ghana.
Nakhensa mthamo xitulu vahlonipheki va huvo maAfrika-Dzonga va rikwerhu holobye, we are staring at what was a preventable water crisis in the face, which shares many of the hallmarks of the energy crisis. The light at the end of the tunnel is the light of an oncoming train coming at full speed down a damaged line with a driver absent from the controls. We must do something, and we must act with urgency to prevent further damage. Yet, I must say, Holobze, your statement lacks urgency. It's like we have time. We do not have time. We must act now. I handle Holobze. This water emergency is a combination of both natural and man-made causes. Compounding existing water scarcity, aging and inadequate infrastructure is making a bad situation much worse. There's little we can do to change our fate as a water-scarce nation. We must do everything we have to do to fix the water infrastructure. That work starts with technical skills and political will. Yet, your statement makes very little mention of the skills required for the monumental task of fixing, maintaining, and upgrading water infrastructure. No effort should be spared in finding the talent required to mitigate and reverse the water crisis. Across the country, on average, 30% of our treated potable water is lost to leaks, cracks, and outdated systems. That's a billion of liters of water and billions of scarce rands lost every year. As a result, cities and rural areas alike are left vulnerable with water supplies that are often unreliable, contaminated, or simply unavailable. For rural communities, poor infrastructure can mean traveling long distances to find a reliable water source. In urban centers, burst old pipes, delayed repairs cause water cuts, disrupting homes, schools, and businesses. We must also recognize the value of smart technology. By using modern systems to monitor and detect leaks in real time, we can dramatically reduce water loss and respond to problems faster. Addressing water infrastructure won't happen overnight, but it is one of the most crucial steps we can take to combat water scarcity. Let's work together to ensure that no drop is wasted and no community is left behind.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ghana, Honorable Wester.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think it's become very clear that if the gift the previous administration gave us was water shedding, the gift that this administration will give us is water shedding. If the previous administration gave us load shedding, the gift that this administration will give us is water shedding. I think that's become very clear. Johannesburg has recently joined scores of towns and cities in this country who have faced intermittent water supply, and experts continue to argue that without urgent investment in infrastructure and strict accountability measures for all stakeholders, our water crisis will only worsen. And the minister herself has acknowledged that 90 billion is required to clear the existing infrastructure backlog, and that's before we start to speak of future projects to keep up with the demand. Yet instead of accountability, what we have seen is blame games that come from the department and the municipalities. I want to quote the minister from a press briefing in August where she said, "People do not seem to appreciate
that the provision of water services is the responsibility of municipalities and not the National Department of Water Sanitation. It would be a priority for us to correct this misunderstanding and to encourage communities and leaders to hold their municipalities accountable. But, Honorable Speaker, let us remember that the accountability does not stop at municipalities. The minister must herself answer to the audit outcomes of her own department, which are deeply concerning. Water supply projects, only 13% have been completed. Bucket sanitation and system eradication, less than 6% have been completed. Dam rehabilitations, only 1 of the 9 planned dam rehabilitations have taken place. So, Minister, you need to account for that. We can't just only hold municipalities accountable when we actually have infrastructure that also compromises them, apart from their own shortcomings. Secondly, the Water Services Act grants you the power as the Department of Water and Sanitation to hand over distribution authority. You said we want to change the law. We don't want to change the law. The law already gives you that authority, Minister, to say if the people of this country are not getting water, other entities can be able to distribute that water. We are not going to allow on our watch for a crisis that affects the economy, for a crisis that affects communities, for a crisis that affects clinics, hospitals, and schools in this country, not on our watch. So, Minister, it's time to take responsibility and stop deflecting. You have the power to be able to change the situation and turn this water crisis around. Thank you.
Thank you. ATM. ATM. Al-Jama, Advocate Salih.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Assalamu alaikum to all. First, Al-Jama applauds the Honourable Minister for recognising a people's right to water and not using the term access to water. But our first step in government is accepting responsibility for failures to ensure the right of water. There's a huge outcry over the water crisis in major cities, but in Transkei, the former apartheid homeland from where our first resistance fighters is from, they are the last to enjoy the right to water. It is pathetic that these communities must wait for more than 20 years for the building of the Umglovu Dam. The catchment area of the dam is the best in Southern Africa, but water is going to waste. Al-Jama calls on the minister to lay the first bricks of the Umglovu Dam. Some of South Africa's major cities such as Gauteng, Tshwane, and KwaZulu-Natal are experiencing water shortages where taps have either run dry, and in some areas there are intermittent supply, while other areas have no water at all. Johannesburg loses about 2/5 of the treated water it gets through leaks and theft, and the eThekwini municipality in Durban loses 46%. We cannot fully blame the water crisis on climate change. The fact is that the country is losing water and the situation will not change. The water infrastructure upgrades as reservoirs are not built to keep up with the current needs of the country, and there has been a constant lack of foreseeability and accountability by government. The biggest problem causing the water crisis lies with the decaying infrastructure, which has been developing over decades. This has been allowed to happen amidst the exponential growth of businesses and population, and of course, the cases of corruption and mismanagement by politicians and officials. Other factors contributing to the current crisis includes delays in swift response to burst pipes and leaks, failure to replace aging pipes, and lack of efficient oversight on infrastructure. South Africa is a water-scarce nation, yet vast amounts are lost due to leaks. Al-Jama appeals to the minister to compel water boards to move from using asbestos pipes to polycarb pipes. National government must introduce workable water-saving incentives, and the various stakeholders at different levels of government should be more accountable in the management of water resources. The same way we appeal to government to fulfill their duties and the responsibility to the right of water, we appeal to South Africans, especially those who have easy access to water, to do their part collectively to value the gift of water. Honourable Minister, please let us not next year come and stand at this podium again while we hear boasting of improvements, but yet our people consistently suffers. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. NCC, Honourable Adams.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Minister, the Progressive Caucus, and the government of national failure. You know, Minister, to term our right to water, you are 100% right. But we also have a right to education. We have a right to healthcare. We have a right to housing. We have a right to safety. All of these are failures of the ANC over the last 30 years. It is time that South Africa admits that all those glorious checks that were written to us 30 years ago have bounced. It is easy, Minister, to use climate change as the excuse for water waste when 40% of our water is lost due to leakage, which is the cause of lack of maintenance. Now, there's a budget for maintenance, but we know what happens to budget in this country. The sad thing, Minister, is that the only thing that may save us is desalination. But we've learned in the Western Cape that desalination, it goes to Israeli companies, and we know what those people think of the rest of us. We sit here, Minister, in your bed, in your GNU, with a Zionist entity that cuts off the water on the Cape Flats. If you doubt it, I invite you to follow me one day. I'll show you. Come to Cape Town. Come and see pensioners unable to take their medication because these Zionist right-wingers that are in your bed, in your GNU, take out our water meters. Come to Mannenberg. Come and see the feces in the street where our children are expected to play, where our children are expected to develop. Water cut off by the Zionists sitting in this room. Madam Speaker, Minister, understand that in this room, they've mentioned agriculture, the importance of agriculture. They didn't mention the human capital that is killed on the farms by these right-wing farmers for as little as an apple. The state of our people, very soon, our poor will be hungry and thirsty. This government has done nothing for our poor. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The PAC. UAT. Good. ANC, Honourable Titebe.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, ntumelle ke nke motsotso ona ho lebisa matshidiso a ka le ya lekgotla la heso la African National Congress malapeng a bashanyana ba babedi ba ha Mkhekwa le Sejentu ba dilemo tse 11 ka ho hlahlamana ibile e le baahisane mane Ward 16 Motsethabong Matjhabeng ho la Freistad. Bashanyana bana ba ile ba kgangwa ke metsi mokoting e leng a launching pit o chipilweng ke ra kontraka mono projecteng ya ho ntjhafatsa dipeipi tsa tsamaiso ya dikgwerekgwere le metsi motseng o. Honorable Speaker, perhaps today we must borrow from the wisdom of the Basotho, which says, and I quote, "Usike wa nyela sidiba," close quote. Roughly translated, this means do not defile the well from which you might need to quench your thirst. It is for this reason that we join you, Comrade Minister, in your great and bold efforts to raise awareness about water conservation demand and sustenance of this resource among end users. Ka ho re ipiletsa baahi bohle ba nang le bokgoni ba ho lefella ditshebeletso tse tshwanang le dikgwerekgwere le metsi o etsa jwalo. Ha bao ba ileng hore ha bana bokgoni ba lokela hore ba ingodise hore bo masepala ba te ba thuswe ka ditjhelete tseo ke mmuso wa bohareng. To this end, I wish to submit that we have it within our power to ensure that our water resource management plans are foolproof and bound to launch us into a sustainable future in which the dignity and well-being of all South Africans is secured or guaranteed. This we must do, Honorable Speaker, through synergies and collaborations among and between
Order,
government.
honorable member. Somebody's phone is on and is making music. Can you please attend to it? Order. Order, honorable members. Honorable members. Order. I am not asking any of you to point fingers at each other or to assist. All what I just said was anybody whose phone is not attended to must attend to. Can we allow the speaker on the podium to proceed?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. To this end, I said, I wish to submit that we have it within our power to ensure that our water resource management plans are foolproof and bound to launch us into a sustainable future in which the dignity and well-being of all South Africans is secured. Thus, we must do through synergies and collaborations among and between government, and I'm referring here to all spheres, national, provincial, and local government, with emphasis, Madam Speaker, on the district development model, which is already showing signs of success. Communities themselves and community organizations, the private sector, by consistently pursuing the following. 1, water resource assessment. We need to start there. 2, assessment of current water availability. 3, assessment of current demand. 4, assessment of future demand. 5, assessment of future availability of water. 6, demand management plan. 7, actions for water resource management. And all of these elements, that's all of what the department is busy doing. Now, all of those members who would like to see evidence to that effect, every Monday must go to the ground and see that for themselves. And indeed, if they are skeptical or even cynical, they will not see the evidence that is so obvious before their eyes. Our country, Madam Speaker, is rich with history and heritage of our struggle, in which the masses of our people heeded the ANC's call for mass mobilization, among other pillars of struggle. Thus, we must consistently engage our citizens to ensure that all of the elements that I have raised are indeed aligned to the energies and the skills of all of our citizens and other valuable role players. Madam Speaker, the department, and when the minister was speaking, it was not a dissertation, it was a very brief statement allotted a certain amount of time. Therefore, she would not necessarily have mentioned everything. There are documents of the department, there's the website of the department, where members can go and see for themselves what work the department is doing to achieve all of these. Let us perhaps talk about some of these. There are projects, Honorable Manyi, in my own municipality of Machabeng, where there is a ministerial intervention, where the asbestos pipes that other members have referred to, which come from the days of apartheid, are now being replaced by the same department which the minister is heading. You go see there, it's a construction site. And I've referred obviously to a tragic incident that happened while that work was happening in Ward 16 in Thabo. Honorable Moore, local government elections are 2 years away. Our focus here and now is to ensure that we are water secure and that we can provide water on a regular basis based on all the 7 elements that I've mentioned. So please, focus on the task at hand and not focus on 2026. To the EFF, avoid revolutionary sounding rhetoric that takes us nowhere fast. In this day and age, our debate cannot and must not be informed about hollow sloganeering, such as privatize everything or nationalize everything, because that will not help us. We need to have our truth derived from facts, guided by evidence about what works and what does not work. To Rise Mzansi, there is urgency certainly in the tone of the minister's statement. And that which you may not have heard explicitly stated here, you will see, as I said, through concrete action that is taking place on the ground as I speak. Honorable Speaker, let me just give you a practical example. As a member of the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation, every time I see an encroachment on the pipeline of the Val Central Water, I take a video and report it to the Val Central Water. I can tell you now that the Val Central Water responds most immediately. Just a while ago when I came to work, a citizen at number 20 Othello Street in St. Helena in Velcom sent me a picture of water that was gushing out. I've just reported it to the authorities in my municipality. That's the practical work that we've got to be doing, rather than coming here to try and score cheap political points. To Bosa, we have a constitution that says there will be cooperative government. Go and read chapter 3 of that constitution. Our roles are delineated. But of course, we believe that all these three spheres of government working together can secure the well-being of our people, as indeed stated in chapter 3. And besides, the department has...
Order, honorable member, your time is up. I will now ask the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, Honorable Mahlobo, to respond, as it is allowed in terms of Rule 133 dealing with executive statements that the Deputy Minister can respond even though the Minister might have opened. Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Somlomo, and thank all those who have made input. Ours is to remind South Africans that water knows no boundary, water has no ideology. Those who input here, let's tell no lies and claim easy victories. I will find time and space to assist Honorable Nxumalo to explain what is water security, but here I don't have the time because your understanding is misconstrued. What we want to confirm to South Africans, that by 2030, our country is not going to run out of water. And Minister has confirmed that the water balance is okay, but there are areas of concern on the basis of population growth, in terms of migration, economic growth, because the GDP has grown. For it to grow, it requires an input on water. Our investment in infrastructure, with regards to issues of water mix, building more dams, we're unpacking that, accelerating the implementation, exploring more groundwater, exploring more seawater. That's why we speak about desalination. It's not a new thing. It's within our shores. We're also looking at issues of atmospheric water solution so that we can have water being available, issues of recycling and reuse, so that we can be able to deal with that particular issue. Water project does not happen overnight. It's a long-term issue, 3, 7 years, 8 years, and more importantly, you have to plan accordingly. I need to indicate that for unblocking of projects, the President has signed the National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency, our TCTA. We're going to the markets. That's why Clan Williams Dam is on track. Umzimvubu, Zanini, Loskop, you name all of them. When it comes to municipalities, we must never bash them. We must acknowledge that in the last 30 years, they've been at the center to bring water to those that were denied, including the opportunities. However, there are worrying signs. What are we doing? In terms of the worrying sign, those who come here, you claim as if it's your statistics. We produce the blue drop, no drop, and the green drop report. We have agreed with municipalities that the implementation model has to change. We're bringing water boards, special purpose vehicles, concession as an implementation model. We're also looking at funding mechanism, traditional funding from ring fencing of the existing grants. water sales, and the tariffs. But then the other funding mechanism were going to the market without privatizing water. That's the implementation model we're doing. In the current challenges we face, one of the biggest questions is our ability to manage infrastructure. We've spoken to all municipalities. We've said we can't lose 47% of the water to the ground because it has two impacts: the economy and the right for humanity is affected. But more importantly, municipalities, they can't get revenue. Municipalities are working very hard now to replace old infrastructure and to refurbish. Because when we do that, we'll then have more water available. But also the efficiency management around pressure-reducing valves, issues of technology that is being used, but there is a role of communities. We don't want to say we want to blame people. There are those who have access, and their usage is running at more than 298 liters per person per day, as compared to 173. But we're acutely aware that there are South Africans who don't have water. In Cape Town and in Nelson Mandela Bay, the relationship by South Africans, it changed. They were able to resolve their situation. One of the other issues we've agreed with municipalities, there are those who are doing illegal connection. They must stop. There are also those who are abusing water tankers. They must also stop because it has an impact on how are we managing our system. To the people of Hammanskraal, Minister Majodina and Premier Lesufi, on this coming Saturday, the first package of the 12.5 megaliters of water will be commissioned. To the people of Mpumalanga in Loskop Dam and those people of Limpopo in that Elias Mutswaledi, our project is towards completion. So that you too, under the sun, you can get water. We want to thank the people of Diane that out of the 55 villages, as we speak right now, 11 of them have water, and the additional 13 will have water by the end of December. The people of KwaZulu-Natal around Gwaklimba, they had no water. I was there, deployed by the minister. The package plant is working, and our people are having water. By December this year, all those communities, the 7 megaliters will be working. To the people of eThekwini, around Hazelmere Dam, it has started raining. You will have the water accumulating in the system. The Natley Dam, that has issues of algae. As we speak right now, Umgeni Water is able to treat that particular algae. You will be in a position to receive water, but under the effective savings. And those are the issues wanted to say. As I conclude, government is providing leadership. President himself is leading. He is able to ensure that water is on the agenda of cabinet. He has assigned his deputy president on the question of a water task team. We work non-stop, including with the Minister of Culture. We want to thank all municipalities and premiers that we have been paying what we are owing to municipalities and the water boards.
Honorable Deputy Minister, your time is up. Honorable, sorry, did you want to raise a question? Okay, I'm sorry, I saw your hand later, and I tried to point the Deputy Minister. Order, honorable members. Order. This concludes the debate on the ministerial statement. I'll ask the Secretary to read the first order.
Debate on 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children, marking 30 years of democratic rights for women and fostering national unity to end gender-based violence.
Honorable Minister.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, fellow South Africans. Honorable Speaker, we thank you very much for the opportunity to open this debate on the 16 Days of Activism against gender-based violence, an international campaign that shines the spotlights on one of the most heinous violations of human rights, that is violence against women and girls. In March of 2021, the Director General of the World Health Organization cautioned that, I quote, "Unlike COVID-19, violence against women cannot be stopped with a vaccine. We can only fight it with deep-rooted and sustained efforts to change harmful attitudes, improve access to opportunities and services for women and girls, and foster healthy and mutually respectful relationships," unquote. Throughout this campaign, we aim to rally all of society to reflect on the past, ongoing, and intersectional ways through which violence against women is reproduced at systemic, structural, household, and individual levels. To achieve this, we need to go beyond the formal definition of violence and provide context to women's experiences of violence. To frame our campaign properly, we want to turn to the work of Professor Phumla Gqola, who describes what she calls the patriarchy script. Beyond tracing gender-based violence to colonial and apartheid origins, when women were considered disposable minors, gender-based violence can also be traced to a script that has conditioned men to feel entitled to more of everything, including more of women's time, labor, and bodies. Violence is often the response to any challenge to these scripts. Women's insistence on owning their time, names, work, bodies is then met with extreme aggression, whether in public institutions like schools, malls, courts, hospitals, churches, or private ones like marriage and family. Our women continue to live in what Phumla has also referred to as female fear factory, a constant and ever-present threat of violence. She says, I quote her, "Through lessons large and small, women also come to understand that they are seen as safe to violate and disposable. That if something violates them or violent happens to them, they may not be believed. And if they are, they will often be blamed for not having prevented or avoided it. We have no choice but to disrupt the patriarchy script and dismantle the female fear factory at homes and our communities." Honorable members, the scale of violence and femicide against women and girls is staggering. Data gathered by UN Women from at least 161 countries reveals that an estimated 736 million women have been subjected to physical and/or sexual intimate partner violence. In South Africa, a woman is killed every 3 hours. Over 50% of women are killed by an intimate partner. In 2023, SAPS reported over 50,000 cases of sexual offenses, predominantly affecting women and children. As the UN General Secretary observed, we are living through a millennia of patriarchy, where violence against women, including femicide, is at epidemic levels. What makes this violence disheartening and difficult to prevent is that it occurs where people's guards are naturally down. On the 18th of November 2024, we will launch a prevalence study on gender-based violence by the Human Science Research Council. The findings point to a continuation of this trend. Honorable Speaker, the descendants of the women who freed this country from slavery, colonialism, and apartheid are themselves not free today. Maria Makgato and Lokadia Ndlovu were killed and later fed to pigs by a racist murderer. In addition to being reduced to servitude under inhuman conditions, women and girls on farms across South Africa endure heinous forms of abuse. We would also like to remind this House that 15 of the 18 family members killed in Lusikisiki were women. We applaud the SAPS for the pace at which they are moving at that case. Honorable Speaker, over the past 3 decades, our government has implemented several targeted interventions to combat gender-based violence, including the establishment of Tutuzela care centers, gender-based violence command centers, and key legislative reforms such as Protection from Harassment Act, the Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act, and the Domestic Violence Act, among others. In addition to these legislative instruments, over the years, we have also introduced policy initiatives such as sexual offences units and sexual offences courts, all aimed to reinforce the fight against sexual crimes. Out of these interventions, we have made some progress, but of course not there yet. Most recently, the President signed into law the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act, a landmark move to provide strategic leadership, enforce accountability, and ensure justice for victims. This reflects our ongoing emphasis on prevention, enhanced protection for victims, and ensuring that perpetrators are held accountable. Honorable Speaker, gender-based violence and femicide and the economic disempowerment of women are two sides of the same toxic coin. Many women remain trapped in abusive relationships because the abuser is the breadwinner. The AU Agenda 2063 underscores the importance of the prevention and economic empowerment as essential strategies to combat gender-based violence and to break the cycles of violence and dependency. We have thus conceptualized a range of socioeconomic interventions to transition vulnerable women into income-generating activities. I will mention just one due to time. First, economic empowerment is incomplete without securing women's meaningful access to land, the basis of all economic activity and a source of dignity. We are thus prioritizing transferring productive land and productive assets to women for commercial purposes. For instance, working with Transnet Properties, we have identified over 22 land pieces in Limpopo, KZN, and the Eastern Cape. These sites will be leased to women at highly subsidized rates, enabling them to develop sustainable enterprises. We are actively identifying more sites and warehouses across 9 provinces. I've also tasked the Women's Economic Assembly, WECONA, to assembly a team of experts that will dissect public procurement and gender-responsive supply chains to ensure that a minimum of 40% of government procurement goes to women-owned businesses in terms of Public Procurement Act. By so doing, we are eliminating dependency and tolerance of gender-based violence and femicide. Honorable members, we aim to harness technology and innovation to combat gender-based violence and accelerate a gender perspective in the digital economy. We will do this through exploring the potential of the new technologies to prevent and respond to gender-based violence. This technology will be launching on the same day as we launch the campaign. The increased use of social media and digital platforms has encouraged the growth of technology-mediated or online bullying, including online gender-based violence. It is necessary to implement robust interventions soon. Under the theme, 30 years of advancing collective action to end violence against women and children, this year's campaign will be launched on the 25th of November in Bojanala, Northwest. As I conclude, fellow South Africans, Dr. Tedros remind us that unlike a virus, there is no vaccine to end gender-based violence. But this truth does not leave us powerless. It challenges us to find the cure. The cure is in our policies, in our schools, in our homes, and in every community that refuses to accept violence as a norm. It is in the unity and action of a nation that no longer tolerates the subjugation of its women and children. Let us be the generation that found the cure, that transformed words into actions, and that worked tirelessly until the chains of violence against women and children were broken once and for all. This is our mission, and we will see it through. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Gaza.
Thank you, House Chair. As siwumkhonto wesizwe, the most decisive, inclusive, and progressive political formation in South Africa, we stand resolutely against the widespread and devastating crisis of gender-based violence, GBV. This GBV is continuing to destroy lives across our nation. This violence particularly affecting abantu besifazane, abantwana, neingane, nabo bonke abaphila nokukhubazeka. Njengoba nje kuyi-16 days of activism against gender-based violence eqala ngoNovember 25 to December 10, this serves as a sobering reminder of the immense work that still lies ahead. While we honor the resilience and strength of GBV survivors, we must confront the painful truth that our collective efforts have yet to stop this violence. The time for real action is now. Izibalo zakamumva eziqhamuke emaphoyiseni zangonyaka ka-22 no-23 zikuveza ngokusobala ukuthi abantu besifazane abaphephile. Kangangokuba kuqoshiwe ukuthi abantu besifazane abawu-10,000 babulewe, kanti abawu-50,000 kuqoshwe amacala ukuthi bayahlukunyezwa. Kuphinde nabantwana bethu, they remain among the most vulnerable. In the same SAPS statistics, over 8,000 children were victims of sexual offenses, and more than 13,000 children were reported as assaulted. Moreover, incidents of child trafficking are on the rise, with children making up 60% of trafficking victims in South Africa. Abantu abaphila nokukhubazeka, kakhulukazi abesifazane nabantwana, they face heightened vulnerability. According to abezindaba, those with disabilities are twice as likely to suffer from physical abuse, sexual violence, and exploitation. They are disproportionately affected by a lack of support structures and face additional barriers to justice, such as lack of access to information and stigma. Honorable Minister, ziningi inhlelo ezisuke zibhalwe phansi ku-program of action, but asifike emphakathini yethu. Sigcina ngokuyibona zivela active ukuthi umnyango uhlelo ukwenza lezi inhlelo kodwa ayifiki ikakhulukazi imiphakathi yethu esemaphandleni. Siyacela ukuthi nizame ukwenza inhlelo zikwazi ukuthi zikhulumeke zifinyelele ebantwini bethu lapha phansi, ngoba kubo bonke abantu abane access ku social media nabakwazi ukuthi bathole indaba. Sidinga ukuthi kube khona inhlelo kuhlangabezane nawo wonke ama stakeholders akhona emphakathini yethu ukuze ikwazi lezi indaba idingidwe, sikwazi ukuphephisa abantu besifazane neingane. Uhulumeni we-ANC unikeziwe ithuba for 30 years ukuthi ungenelele ukuxazulula zonke lezi inkinga esibhekene nabantu abesifazane. Abantu besifazane abahlonishwe. Our call for action, we demand immediate reform of the justice system to provide swift, effective justice for survivors of GBV. This includes ensuring that cases are fast-tracked and that police officers are better trained to handle GBV cases. Okwesibili, we need stronger laws and policies that will impose harsher penalties for perpetrators of GBV and ensure that institutions that support survivors are adequately resourced. A focus on prevention, addressing the root causes of GBV, such as poverty, unemployment, and toxic masculinity, while also ensuring the economic empowerment of women, particularly in marginalized communities. Sineyinkinga ey'ngaka nje zokuhlukunyezwa kwabantu besifazane, badiniwe abantu abanayo imisebenzi. Yingakho isikhathi esiningi begcina sebesebenzisa ngendlela yokuthi babe nolaka bahlukumeza abantu besifazane. Stronger community education and awarenesses campaigns. Njengoba ngisho nje, Honorable Minister, siyawadinga ama-awarenesses emphakathini yethu. The South African government should be ashamed. The South African government should be deeply ashamed for its continued failure to protect women, children, and vulnerable groups from the rampant crisis of gender-based violence. Despite countless promises, campaigns, and resources allocated to the issue, the government's inaction and system failures have allowed the epidemic to grow unchecked. Every day, women are murdered, abused, and violated in unimaginable ways, while perpetrators roam free due to inefficient law enforcement and lack of accountability. The recent statistics are nothing short of a national disgrace. In 2022-23 alone, over 50,000 women were assaulted and 10,000 murdered, and thousands of children were sexually assaulted. This is a moral and human rights catastrophe, and yet the government response remains tepid and best. The ruling ANC and the current government of national unity, the DA-led coalition, have not only failed to deliver justice, but have contributed to a culture of impunity for those who commit these heinous acts. Where is the agency? Where is the action that should follow such appalling statistics? It is a gross betrayal of every woman and child who faces violence in their own homes, on the streets, or within their communities. It is a callous disregard for human dignity that will not be forgiven. This government empathy and responsibility. Every moment of inaction, every unaddressed case of violence sends the message that lives of South Africans, women and children do not matter. That is a shame the nation must confront head on. The time for empty promises is over. The government must act decisively or face its legacy as the administration that turned a blind eye to the cries of its most vulnerable citizens. End gender-based violence, protects our women and children and people living with disabilities. I thank you.
Thank you. Before I call the next speaker, honourable members are reminded, honourable members to my left, you are reminded that it is not in accordance with our rules to take photos and videos during the plenary sessions. The next speaker is the Honourable Breitenbach.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable House Chair, Honourable Members, we address today a topic that remains one of the most urgent human rights challenges in South Africa and across the world. It is a topic we discuss often in this House, yet the statistics keep on climbing and we appear not to be winning this battle. Despite our apparent best efforts, GBV remains a massive problem and an indictment on all of us. In South Africa, the scourge of GBV is deeply entrenched, affecting the most vulnerable members of society, particularly women and children. However, the problem is far from simple. It is not just about isolated instances of brutality or random acts of aggression. It's a pervasive social epidemic that is intimately tied to the fabric of our culture, our history, and our social structures. To properly begin to combat GBV, we need to understand the complex and multidimensional nature of gender-based violence in South Africa. We need to honestly explore the causes and manifestations of this violence, the impact it has on individuals and society, and most importantly, the cultural enablers that perpetuate it. By understanding these underpinnings, we can better navigate the path towards meaningful change and work together to create a society where gender-based violence is not only not tolerated, but actively eradicated. GBV refers to violence that is directed against individuals based on their gender. While men can be, and often are, also victims of GBV, women, girls, and gender minorities are disproportionately affected. GBV includes physical, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse, and it often manifests in intimate partner violence, domestic violence, rape, sexual harassment, and even harmful traditional practices. In South Africa, the statistics surrounding GBV are alarming. The country has one of the highest rates of rape and domestic violence in the world. According to South African police crime statistics, 4 women are raped every hour in our country. Let's take a moment to think about that. By the time this debate is finished, 8 more women will have suffered from this horrific crime. While we are sitting here debating, multiple women out there are currently becoming victims of GBV and rape as we speak. That is both terrifying and totally unacceptable. In the 2023-2024 second quarter crime stats, the police recorded 10,516 rapes, as well as 1,514 cases of attempted murder and 14,400 assaults against female victims in a 3-month period. As we know, this is not the full picture, as many such cases are not reported. The consequences of GBV are profound. Survivors face physical, emotional, and psychological trauma that can persist for years. Families and communities are fractured, and the broader societal impact is significant. GBV contributes to a cycle of poverty, economic instability, and social inequality, while also perpetuating gender discrimination and reinforcing of harmful stereotypes. One of the most difficult aspects of addressing GBV in South Africa is the cultural framework that often condones or enables this violence. Such cultural enablers are deeply embedded in societal norms, practices, and beliefs, making them difficult to challenge. They form a part of the social fabric, shaping how we view gender roles, power dynamics, and what constitutes acceptable behavior. Patriarchy and power dynamics play a significant role in the perpetuation of GBV in this country. Patriarchy is a system of societal organization in which men hold primary power, dominating roles of leadership and control the economic and political systems. In South Africa, patriarchy is a pervasive force that has shaped not only social structures, but also individual attitudes and behavior. In many South African communities, the patriarchal mindset is so ingrained that it influences the way men and women are expected to behave. Men are often viewed as the head of the household, the providers and the ultimate authority, while women are expected to take on subservient roles, focusing on caregiving and domestic responsibilities. This entrenched power imbalance allows for the normalization of violence against women, especially with intimate relationships. Men are often socialized to view women as property or objects to be controlled. This mindset can lead to violent expressions of power, such as domestic abuse, sexual assault, and femicide. Violence becomes a tool to assert dominance and punish perceived disobedience and reinforce control. In some marginalized communities, individuals, but especially men, may see violence as a way to resolve conflict or assert authority. Children growing up in homes where violence is common internalize these behaviors, learning that violence is an acceptable way of coping with frustration, anger, or jealousy. This creates a generational cycle of abuse where the children of abusive parents become abusers themselves. The state plays a critical role in either enabling or combating GBV. In South Africa, the state's response to GBV has been widely criticized for its inefficiency and lack of adequate support for survivors. Law enforcement agencies are often ill-equipped to deal with the complexities of gender-based violence. And there are too many instances where survivors of violence face indifference or hostility from police officers. The judicial system struggles to address the issue effectively. Many survivors of GBV do not trust the court to deliver justice, particularly when the perpetrator is a well-known community member or a family member. Victims may be subjected to lengthy delays, insensitive treatment, or victim-blaming attitudes during legal proceedings. In addition, the lack of resources for survivors, such as shelter, mental health care, and financial assistance, means that many victims are forced to return to dangerous environments. This lack of institutional support, coupled with cultural attitudes that blame the victim, only serves to perpetuate the cycle of violence. If we are to successfully combat GBV in our country, a fundamental shift in attitudes is necessary. This requires a change in how we view gender, power, and violence. We need to dismantle the deeply entrenched patriarchal systems that perpetuate abuse and work towards building a society where all individuals, regardless of gender, can live without fear of violence. This requires engaging principally men and boys in the conversation about gender, power, and violence. By encouraging men to embrace positive forms of masculinity, we can begin to shift the narrative away from dominance and control and towards respect, empathy, and equality. While changing attitudes is a long-term process, immediate action can be taken through strengthening legal protection and support systems for survivors. The state must hold perpetrators of GBV accountable, and victims must feel safe and supported in reporting incidents of abuse. This means creating a justice system that is responsive, compassionate, and free of bias. Education at all levels, beginning in schools, is essential to challenge harmful gender stereotypes and teach young people about healthy relationships, consent, and respect. Through education, we can break the cycle of violence and build a culture of respect and equality. We must remember that ending GBV is not just the responsibility of government or the organizations fighting for women's rights. It is the responsibility of all of us, all men, women, young and old, in every community, in every corner of this country. We have a role to play in creating a future where GBV is a thing of the past and where all individuals can live free from fear and harm in a culture of mutual respect. I thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Mainten Kuna.
Masibulele House Chair. Sithathele thuba House Chairs. Sibulise umongameli we-EFF okhokhela ibattalion kule parlamente elidwa ngabafazi abangaphezulu ko-63%. Abazi-whips eziyi-7 ezinhlanu zabo ngabafazi. Sithi qina mongameli le battalion ne-EFF owayakhaya yiyindawo. Silapha sizawuba lapha kude kuyophela. Sibulele i-EFF nge-GBV desk eyayakhayo ekhokhelwa ngu-DSG uPoppy Mayilola encede abafazi abangamakhulukhulu kule South Africa. Chairperson, iminyaka yonke sizapha sithethe into enye siphinde kungenzeki nix. Uminister lento ayithetha apho akangowokuqala ukutsho, akazuba ngowokugqibela kude kutshintshe lo rhulumente ungenzi into. Year after year we flash statistics and the ruling elite makes hollow commitments to the fight against embedded violence against women in this country. Yes, despite the commitments, there's nothing concrete. Nothing. There's no hope for the women and children of this country. All the cases the minister was mentioning here, they could have been avoided. Ucinga fan baba bantu bebeza kufikelwa ngamapolisa ngexesha uba bebewabizile ebengazufika. Ucinga fan ba zonke ezi cases zabantu abaziwayo njengakanamhla kungakabanjwa mntu namhlanje iluncedo ngantoni into enjalo. But not so long ago, the head of Department of Public Works and Infrastructure in the Eastern Cape, Thando Lwethu Manda, was placed on indefinite leave after it emerged that he has been using his position as an HOD to elicit sexual favors and in some instances rape young interns in the department. The fact that he is not suspended or dismissed tells us a lot about the nature of the administration of the Eastern Cape and its attitude towards women. Not that the minister doesn't know that, she doesn't mention it. We know that there have been numerous cases of sex and reports of sexual violence for jobs in the Eastern Cape. But government wethu Uzivulile indlebe, uzivalile, because these are men and monsters that hold the power at the highest echelons. We are here as women to protect such monsters. You are here as women to say absolutely nothing in defense of those selfless women who are looking for nothing but umsebenzi. But thina silapha singabafazi be-EFF to defend and protect the dignity and the integrity of those women who are looking for jobs because urhulumente wethu akacreate nalo misebenzi. But ke siyayazi sinayo imithetho besiyipasisile kule ndlu, but izawusinceda ngantoni lo mithetho xa kungekho urhulumente uzimisele uku-implementa lo mithetho. Siyayazi ngoku ngokwestatistics ukubana ngaba ngaphezulu kwe-53,285 reported cases of sexual assault in this country. We also know that 42,569 of those were rape. But naku kwenzeka, Minister, inyaniso is that wena norhulumente wakho we-GNU are the biggest enablers of violence against women in this country. This is because we were lied to in this parliament many a times that there are GBV cases in police stations. Go to any nearest police station and see if you're going to find a GBV desk anywhere. We were lied to and told that FCS has capacity to deal with cases. It does not. One detective is on standby every time after 4 and weekends to deal with no less than 5 police stations, and that is more than 1 million people in population. Yet, you say you are serving the people. Let me give you a story. Nobuhle was a Blue Combos. Unobuhle was raped by a monster in the after hours of the day. One detective that was available from the Milner team, FCS, could not attend to the case because why a busy case as Atlantis, one, he can't double himself. Number 2, when Unobuhle wakes up to go to with the detective to the rape care center, we are figure rape care center, doctor was a rape care center, you didn't make an appointment, therefore I can't see you. Unobuhle had to sit with the disgusting smell of her perpetrator for 2 days because there was one detective on duty that could take over her case. The doctor at the victim center could not attend to her. What option does she have? She has to go back to the perpetrator that ultimately killed her. What do you say about that? Today, change how you say things and how you do things.
Honorable Member.
During the constituency period, we went to Milnerton FCS only to find
Honorable
5
Member,
detectives.
unfortunately, your time has now expired.
And nothing they can do for women because the state is the one that does not
Honorable
capacitate
Mente.
the police to deal with the cases of rape.
Thank you, Honorable Mente. The next speaker is the Honorable Mshlongo.
Speaker,
Order, honorable members. We have the next speaker on the podium. Please take your seats.
over the past 30 years, our democratic changes have empowered women more than ever. We have made significant progress in the protection of women's rights in our Constitution, promoting equality, dignity, and justice. However, the reality is that 1 in 5 women in South Africa faces physical violence, and we have one of the highest femicide rates in the world. The statistics signifies shattered lives, broken families, and devastated communities. As we mark this anniversary, we remember that our fight against gender-based violence is linked to the core of our democracy. A democracy that supports rights must also ensure safety and security for all citizens. The 16 days of activism is not just a campaign. It is a movement aimed at raising awareness, encouraging discussions, and demanding actions from everyone: government, society, civil society, and individuals. To truly honor the rights we fought for, we need to create a culture of respect and accountability. We can achieve this through education and engagement. We must confront harmful attitudes that lead to violence. By coming together in this cause, we can inspire men and boys to stand with women as allies. Ending gender-based violence is a shared responsibility, not just a women's issue. It is a societal obligation. The anniversary also pushes us to reform our policies. It is a chance to advocate for better laws that tackles the root causes of gender-based violence and ensure support for survivors. We must call for more resources for shelters, counseling services, and legal aid to create a solid support system for those affected by violence. Let's use the momentum of the 16 days of activism to start a national conversation. We need to amplify the voices of our survivors and hold perpetrators accountable. Together, we can challenge the existing norms and build a society where women and children can live without fear, and that truly reflects our democratic values. As we celebrate 30 years of women's rights in South Africa, I urge everyone to see the importance of this movement. Let's commit to taking action. Let's unite to end gender-based violence for good. Together, we can create a future where all individuals are safe, respected, and empowered. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Peterson.
Thank you, House Chair. The 16 Days of Activism provides a space for people to openly discuss difficult topics like domestic abuse, sexual violence, and stigma. As the years went by, we have witnessed a tenfold increase in violence against women and children. While this campaign unites activists, organizations, and individuals from around the world under one banner, the question remains, how practical has this campaign been altered to directly speak to how the violence against women and children have skyrocketed? While the 16 Days of Activism can generate awareness, they do not tackle the cultural norms and gender inequalities that perpetuate violence. As police stations across the country continue to operate without rape kits, gender-based violence remains a persistent and growing problem with significant increases. It is imperative that we improve the effectiveness of this campaign going forward, simply because violence against women and children do not only happen from the 25th of November to the 10th of December. This campaign should be held throughout the year. It is essential to recognize that the rate of reporting of gender-based violence is often low, while we acknowledge the ones who didn't make it to headlines but suffered the consequences of injustice. 16 Days of Activism might not even be accessible due to lack of resources in marginalized communities. Violence against women and children is a deep-rooted issue that requires consistent action over the long haul, not just a 2-week burst of attention. The police have a long way to go when it comes to how they treat those who run to them for help. Activism needs to be embedded into the fabric of society, not confined to one period of the year. For individuals who advocate for violence against women and children, It becomes exhausting to sustain a high level of engagement in a short period, only to face the silence that follows when the campaign ends. In conclusion, rather than focusing on a short period campaign, we propose year-round activism that focuses on prevention, education, and advocacy at the local, regional, and provincial levels. Expand the role of provinces in the fight against violence against women and children. The more resources should be made available at the provincial level to localize the fight. We need community-driven solutions that engage men, women, and children in the fight against gender equality. It is not enough to focus solely on raising awareness for 16 days. We must build a future where gender-based violence is a thing of the past every day of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Adams.
Thank you, Chairperson. Despite the numerous interventions undertaken in the past 30 years of our democracy intended to tackle the cause of gender-based violence and femicide, there are persistent factors which continue to undermine these interventions and hinder meaningful and sustainable progress, such as patriarchal systems which reinforce male domination and subjugates women across different communities and social economic contexts. In this regard, patriarchy has been able to inform social norms and values that have shaped attitudes and practices which place women in vulnerable positions, including forced control over the lives of women, their bodies, and choices. In undertaking the contributing factors to our contemporary society and the challenges encountered, there's a proverb that states, open quotes, the roots of a tree cast shadows even when the branches are far away, close quote. The proverb reminds us that South African society, despite 30 years of democracy, the outbreaks of violence in our society are a manifestation of our historical context, which remains deeply entrenched in the structural and systematic article design of the apartheid regime. In this regard, our continued battle against the war on women and children is not isolated from our historical colonial and apartheid roots. Contemporary South Africa is still grappling with the legacy of the migrant labor system, for instance, which fragmented family unites by forcing men to leave their families to work in the mines and distant cities, thus weakening the family bond and community cohesion. We are still battling through the legacies of many black families by design being plucked into the overcrowded communities, into poverty, racial and gender disparity in accessing education, healthcare, and economic opportunities, all of which are contributing factors to an environment which perpetuate gender-based violence. Furthermore, our society still has a long way to go to debunking myths about the nature and profile of perpetrators and victims. Our educational and awareness program must bring us closer to appreciating and responding to the complex range of backgrounds, relationships, and power dynamics in which violence occurs. In this regard, perpetrators can be family members, romantic partners, work colleagues, and friends. Such church leaders, strangers of people who accompany prominent positions in society. In addition, all victims are legitimate regardless of their socio-economic background or what they were wearing. We must continue to foster space where victims and survivors are believed and supported with the necessary required support made available. We must create an environment where victims and survivors are empowered and where we challenge stigma and victims blaming and encourage to a culture of reporting of breaking the violence. This also requires that we strengthen policing and the legal system to be more accessible, responsive, and sensitive to the victims and survivors. The ANC-led government is committed to continue to address the intersectional root cause fueling violence against women and children, developing legislature and social programs intended to uproot these structural, systematic, and historical inequities towards the realization of a truly free and just society where its
Thank you,
citizens...
Honourable Adams. Your time has now expired.
Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Denner.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the campaign of 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children started in 1991, which marks 2024 the 23rd year in which this campaign has been ongoing. During this time, the femicide rate decreased from 25 per 100,000 in 1999 to around 12 per 100,000 in 2009 and remains unchanged. Though there has been a slight decrease, the reality is that 7 women are killed in our country each day, and 6 out of 10 of these are killed at the hands of a husband, a boyfriend, or an otherwise intimate partner. Chair, we stand here each year debating the importance of the 16 Days campaign and what it means. And nearly everyone emphasizes the fact that activism by each and every one in our society should not be limited to only 16 days, but should be a 365 days fight against the pandemic of GBV and femicide that has our country in its terrible grip. Yet, the numbers show that South Africa continues to have one of the highest femicide rates in the world, and even more alarming is the fact that convictions in these cases have dropped to less than 1 in every 5 intimate partner murders being prosecuted and convicted. To quote the Chief Specialist Scientist at the South African Medical Council's journal, Gender and Health Research Unit, the fact that conviction rates are so low and the number of unsolved cases is growing should be a resounding call to improve our justice system's response to gender-based violence. Voorsitter, dis egter nie net ons strafregstelsel wat moet verbeter nie. Ons land Suid-Afrika is siek. Ons mooi land met sy diverse mense en tale en kulture is kernongesond weens onbeskryflike vergrype soos menseregte skendings, bedrog, korrupsie, gebrek aan politieke wil, selfdienende neigings, swak bestuur, algehele onvermoë en leierskap wat kies om te plunder in plaas daarvan om te bou. Die simptome van hierdie siekte is 'n swak ekonomie, werkloosheid, 'n swak gesondheidsorgstelsel, 'n swakker onderwysstelsel, hoë misdaadsyfers, swak dienslewering, swakker plaaslike regering en sosiale ewels soos drank en dwelmmisbruik. En wie ontgeld hierdie simptome? Ons vroue en kinders. GBV is a systemic problem, and the Minister mentioned it as well. It's not something that only the justice system or the health system or better policing can fix. And it's definitely not something that we can fix with awareness campaigns without putting our money where our mouths are. Before we can mark 30 years of democratic rights for women, we need to improve our unemployment rate so women can find work to provide for themselves and foster their independence. The same goes for our education and our healthcare
Honourable
systems.
Denner, please just take a seat for a moment. I see a hand there. Why do you want to be recognised, Honourable Member?
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to get an interpreter of Isindebele. Here, there's nothing as yet. And we agreed the last time that this will be addressed.
Yes. Honourable Member, can I give you my undertaking that we will get back to that? The Deputy Speaker has been tasked with I want to say, addressing the interpretation services. I was following at least the Afrikaans to English, which to the best of my knowledge is the service that is provided. It is
Chair.
from other official languages to English when other official languages are used.
Chair, you've been saying that, I don't know for how many times. You've been saying that this matter will be looked upon. And indeed, to me, it seems like, you know, it's a lip service thing which I'm always hearing over and over again. I'm saying to you, there's no interpreter of Sindebele. The same thing you said last month or 2 months ago. We are repeating the same thing here.
Yeah.
No, it's unacceptable.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Denner, please continue.
Before we can mark 30 years of democratic rights for women, Honourable Skosana, we need to capacitate our police and our social services so women and children feel safe. And before we can mark 30 years of democratic rights for women, we need to empower the men in our society with employment, basic services for own job creation, proper education and healthcare, and economic prosperity, to also restore dignity, the lack of which too often fuels social ills that contributes to the GBV pandemic. We need systemic change. We can do that, Minister. That is where our activism should start. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognise the Honourable James as the next speaker in this debate.
Speaker, honourable members, violence against women and children is at an alarming rate, and we speak of it in such a candid manner. Have you not seen the front pages of the newspapers? Brutal murders every day. The last couple of weeks, we've seen murders and we've seen the pictures of little children on the front pages of these newspapers because of this government being an enabler to what is unfolding in our communities in terms of the spaza shops. That too is abuse of children. Minister, you have said earlier on, we have made many strides, you say, strides with zero conviction rates. Where are all, someone is speaking. We have made many strides, you say, strides with zero conviction rates. Where are all these strides and efforts within our communities? Bold utterances and savvy themes with no compassion and conviction. 16 days of activism, how? Minister of Social Development, there are scores of children in the Western Cape and in Gauteng in lolly lounges. Where are your field and intake social workers if you are so serious? Minister of Education, the girl child is dropping out of school, hasn't been registered. Where are your social workers to ensure that every child has the right to education? Human settlements, for how much longer must that mother live in that one-room home with 6 children in one room? For how many years? When do you intend addressing her needs? Home Affairs, you are an enabler and a sponsor to substance abuse, which is directly linked to gender-based violence. We as mothers in communities, we keep mopping up, but the borders and the ports of this country remains open. SAPS, I don't even want to go there. You are a disgrace, a complete letdown. After I have visited several police stations in the past month, there's absolutely no support for women impacted, affected, that run to your police stations in their time of need. Not one, it is sad to say that more than 1,100 police stations, out of 1,100 police stations, we don't have not a single police station in this country that is compliant as per the Domestic Violence Act 116 of 1998. As we approach this year's 16 Days of Activism against women and children, it is vital to reflect on the essence of activism, derived from the Latin word actus, meaning doing. Are we truly doing enough? The answer is no. South Africa is grappling with one of the most profound social crises of all times, a failure in policy, execution, and justice. These failures, as we've heard, manifest in the lived experiences of countless individuals daily. To drive meaningful change, it is essential to move beyond numbers on a police report, beyond statistics, beyond imbizos, and amplify the voices and the stories of victims and the plight of many communities. Action SA believes that the solution to this is to evoke real collective action. Action SA urgently implores the government to enhance community-led initiatives, targeting gender inequality and supporting women-led grassroots organizations. It is imperative that we reinforce all efforts towards a comprehensive strategy combining prevention and swift response to eradicate this deeply entrenched scourge from society, because so kan dit nie aangaan nie. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, before I call the next speaker, Honourable Manye, and I see that Honourable Skosana has just stepped out for a moment. I just want to confirm that indeed one is in Ndebele translator has been appointed and is assisting, but unfortunately on days like today when we are having very long plenaries, not on a continuous basis. So the administration is still looking into supplementing that specific translation component. So that is just some feedback for you. If you'll just relay that to the Honourable Skosana, please. Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Thring.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. When reflecting on our journey to end gender-based violence, the ACDP finds little cause for celebration, particularly when we look at the realities our women and children face. We have established comprehensive legal frameworks such as the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, and enacted new laws like the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act to provide leadership and resources to end GBV. But the statistics remain devastating. At last month's UCT Sweep Women's Conference, it was revealed that 1 in 5 women students in our country is affected by the scourge of GBV, as between April and June this year alone, a staggering 11,500 cases of sexual abuse were reported. Additionally, according to the latest crime statistics, a rape is reported every 12 minutes in South Africa. In the last year, 1,116 children were killed. 1,501 children were victims of attempted murder. And 25,196 children were seriously assaulted. And our conviction rate is minimal. We are facing, in every sense, a national emergency. Yet 4 years after the launch of the National Strategic Plan on GBV, academics and activists at the National Shelter in Durban agree that much still remains to be done. Dr. Nekama Brody, a researcher, pointed out the bitter irony that we face. South Africa has some of the strongest laws and arguably the most extensive data on gender-based violence. Yet, despite all of the words on paper, women and children continue to be murdered in South Africa. Dr. Brody highlighted that we know what is needed to address femicide and violence, yet 2 decades later, these recommendations have yet to be fully implemented. The ACDP calls for an improved public database, trained investigators for female murder cases. We need homicide case management guidelines and measures to address alcohol abuse. These are not overly ambitious goals, but small, measurable steps that could make a difference if implemented. Measurability and accountability are key in ending this horrendous disregard for women and children's safety and dignity. The ACDP urges government and law enforcement agencies to enforce our laws with resolve and to ensure accountability in every sector. We call for urgent action, not rhetoric, to put an end to gender-based violence in South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Ntenja.
Honorable House Chair, thank you. Honorable House Chair, the gender-based violence and femicide is a pandemic that government has been unable to find a suitable cure for. South Africans see GBV as the most important women's rights issue and a critical criminal matter. According to SEPS, rape and contact crimes are on the rise, with more women and children murdered and sexually assaulted during the first quarter of the current financial year. These shocking numbers demonstrate that we are faced with a national crisis, Honorable Minister, that needs a strategic and multifaceted approach to address and dislodge the scourge with its roots. While we acknowledge the legislation reforms made by the government, which includes the recent National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Bill that was signed into law on 24 May 2024, the UDM believes that this crisis needs 365 days attention as the violation happens throughout the year and not focus on 16 days. GBV requires more preventive measures such as reviewing the granting of bail and parole for gender-based offenders, as they are most likely to intimidate the victims or re-offend. According to the Department of Correctional Services, more than 65% of parolees return to prison within 2 years. Honorable Minister, let's be honest, the rehabilitation process in the correctional service centers is flawed, and it literally does not provide an effective guide for offenders to fit back into societies. Hence, the UDM has been calling on the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the Department of Correctional Services not to grant bail and parole, especially to convicts of Schedule 8 offenses, which includes rape and murder. When a person violates someone else's rights, the person should forfeit his own rights. Honorable Minister, all relevant government departments, stakeholders, feminist and GBV organizations must work together to defeat this pandemic. We must remember the triumph of this fight lies upon our daily actions and choices to protect those who are often vulnerable and victims of any form of violence. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Ghana.
Let me start this debate by stating the obvious. I am a man. I am born of a woman. I was raised by a woman. The women of our country are not safe. Let's be frank with one another. The reason the women of our country are not safe is because of us, men. we are making life unbearable for many South African women. They live in fear because of us. As men, we cannot stand on the sidelines of this issue. Violence against women is not just a women's issue. It is a societal issue, a human issue, and it is one that demands the attention and action of every single one of us. Statistics paint a painful reality. In South Africa, reports of gender-based violence and femicide are alarmingly high. Women and girls continue to suffer at the hands of partners, strangers, and even family members who are men. We must act. We as men must look at the roles we play in allowing this culture of violence to persist. The 16 days of activism is not just about awareness. It's about change. It has to be about change. It has to be about change of attitudes towards women. And change begins with us. It starts with us calling out harmful behavior, no matter how small it may seem. It starts with us challenging harmful stereotypes, refusing to accept language or jokes that degrade or objectify women. And it starts with us looking inwards, reflecting on our own actions, our own biases, and committing to doing better. We must create a culture where every woman can walk the streets of our country without fear. It starts with us men. We need to get the criminal justice system to protect the women of our country working. We need the police stations to be compliant with the Domestic Violence Act. Perpetrators of violence against women must be arrested, successfully prosecuted, and sent to jail. So I ask each one of you, especially my fellow men, to join me in this commitment. Let's not just say no to violence against women. Let's make it a reality. Together, let's build a South Africa where women are free from fear.
I now recognize the Honourable Webster as the next speaker in the debate.
Thank you, House Chair. As we approach 16 days of activism against gender-based violence this year, we have got to be clear. This House cannot afford to offer platitudes this time. We need real solutions. Gender-based violence is a war. It's a war against women in South Africa. It's a war that threatens the very fabric of our society. In this House today are members of our society who are at the core face of this crisis, who fight against gender-based violence every day. And I want to recognize Bernadine Bacher, who's the director of the Saki Bachman Center for Women and Children, and her team and the work that they do. I also want to say that them being here today, they represent not just those who work to fight gender-based violence, they represent the women and children in this country who want more than lament. They don't want to hear the statistics, they know them. They don't want to hear what the situation is, they know the lived reality every single day. They want commitments to turn this situation around. And in this country, we have a harsh reality of reoffense. We have one of the highest rates of recidivism, which means reoffense and relapse. 9 out of 10 ex-offenders reoffend when they are released. But we can reduce this number. We've all heard the tragic stories of women who have fallen victim to individuals with prior convictions, some reoffending while on parole, some repeating violent acts against those who had already surfaced once. Many of us, if not all of us in this House, will recognize the name Uyinene Mkhwetjane, will recognize the name Karabo Mkwena, will recognize the name Anine Boyson. But many of us don't know the names of their perpetrators. They could be walking the streets having been released as we come outside. They could be in our workplaces, they could be in our homes, and we would not know them. And so we need to have more preventative measures. We recognize the work that has been done to try and have interventions to reduce GBV, but not enough has been done in terms of preventative measures. And so if we're going to make a meaningful impact in these 16 days of activism, we need to make the National Register for Sexual Offenders public and readily accessible. We need to be able to put names and faces to offenders who roam our streets. Currently, the process to access this register is lengthy, it's bureaucratic, it's only for certain institutions, and it comes at a cost with a 6-week minimum waiting period. That register needs to be accessible because while we say that we want to fight GBV, we cannot ever hope to realize the end of GBV if we do not take preventative measures and if we do not make sure that we're protecting the most vulnerable so that we see gender equality in this country eventually. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker on behalf of the ATM? If not, then I call on the Honourable Tsotsetse.
A ke go leboge modulasetulo, honorable members and South Africans. It is an undeniable fact that women of South Africa have experienced physical violence in all the imaginable categories of their interactions with male counterparts. And that is expressed in the following manner out of the statistics. That 18% of women who are not married have experienced physical violence from their own counterparts. 14% of women in marriages are experiencing physical violence. 31% of women who are living together with partners do experience physical violence. 24% of widowed women have experienced physical violence, while a staggering 40% of women who have ultimately separated with their counterparts have also experienced some sort of abuse in form of physical violence in their relationships. These shameful numbers are a daily reality of the living conditions of women of this country. If there is any parliament across the world that has an obligation to take a debate on 16 days of activism against the abuse of women and children seriously, that would be this parliament. This debate is not worthy of political grandstanding by any amongst us. It is deserving of the utmost sincerity and careful consideration on what it is that we must do next to arrest this particular tragedy that is confronting our women. As we do so, we must reflect honestly on the successes and the interventions that are put in place by civil society, as well as government in our collective attempt to fight the abuse of women and children. We must also reflect on the setbacks encountered with a view to correct them and improve the situation confronted by women and children of this country. House Chair, this parliamentary debate on 16 days of activism, it is the first of its kind since the President, His Excellency Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, signed a National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide into law on the 24th of May 2024. This on its own is bringing into the fore yet another platform that must assist the country to upscale the battle against the abuse of women. Under his leadership, the state is instructed to oppose bail on any case wherein an abuser of a woman is arrested and appears before the court of law. Under his leadership, the state is intensively driving the establishment of the Tutuzela care centers, aiming to keep women safe if they have nowhere to run to escape their abusers. Honorable Manya, I think you must take them as well. It is under this president wherein the minimum punishment for femicide, which is the killing of women, is a life sentence, has a life sentence imprisonment. It is under this president, and I'm going to repeat, wherein the minimum punishment for femicide and killing of women is a lifetime sentence of imprisonment. Honorable members, we mention all this to highlight the undeniable fact that there is an effort to end gender-based violence. However, it is also an undeniable fact that the role of the state in this regard is limited to consequence management and imposing harsh punishment against the perpetrators who have already committed the crime against women and children. The idea is to ensure that the abuse does not happen at all. It is therefore required, honorable members, that the focus of this debate should be around preventing the abuse of women from taking place in the first place. The perpetrator who abuse women and children is often men of this country. It therefore means that the 16 days of activism must no longer involve women. It must rather be 16 days of honest reflections amongst men of all ages. Men must spend this period answering a question: what it is that I have done throughout the year to protect a woman from abuse. And men must also respond to the follow-up question, which is, what will I do to protect a woman from abuse in the next or in the whole of the next year? An honest response to both these questions has a potential to prevent women and children from experiencing pain and trauma while saving our nation from the shame that is undergoing as a result of this. Honorable House Chair, this campaign must take a different turn. It must mainly focus on how we act collectively to mold a boy child and create out of him a responsible citizen of this country.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Unfortunately, your time has expired.
It has expired.
The next speaker is the Honourable Saleh.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. First and foremost, I would like to extend a warm welcome to my mentor, Advocate Bernadine Bacher and team, and thank you for the hard work and dedication that you have committed to the most vulnerable. Gender-based violence is a global problem impacting almost every aspect of life. In South Africa, a woman is murdered every 3 hours. One of the key factors leading to the increase of GBV is our government's slow action in the legal implementation to keep women safe. The current enacted legislation does not address the increasing rate in GBV of women and children and elders. Despite the progress that has been made to address GBV, there remains a lack of effective support offered to victims of GBV. The dismissive attitudes of law enforcement officials and the lack of legislative enforcement. The Department of Justice has itself admitted its weaknesses and bureaucratic inefficiency to effectively convict rapists and to protect women against gender-based violence. Victims of GBV has become desensitized because they believe that reporting the crime to police would not result in justice being served, and they do not want to deal with police who display no empathy toward them. If the assistance to GBV
Honourable
victims...
Saleh, my apologies to interrupt you. Won't you just again try and move the microphone so that it's more in front of you? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to start from... Okay, thank you. Victims of GBV has become more desensitized because they believe that reporting the crime to police would not result in justice being served, and they do not want to deal with police who display no empathy towards them. If the assistance to GBV victims on the ground is poor, when the well-meant governmental action from the top will be a waste. Honourable Minister, daily we are flooded with information of GBV, women, children and elders. This morning I was called upon a gang rape in Athlone area and extortion by criminals attempting to pay victims to be silent or else. That perpetrators are able to walk freely after being charged is a disgrace. Is this the norm for victims to become nothing but statistics? Poverty, lack of economic development are major contributors to GBV, and in most cases, women are forced to remain in abusive relationships as they have no other support. There is an urgent need to increase the number of safe places for not only abused women, but for abused children and elders. These safe places should be well equipped to address the needs of the victims who suffer from emotional, physical, and psychological abuse who have not sought medical assistance. The integrated victim empowerment policy, which focuses on a holistic view of the emotional, social, financial, and physical trauma of GBV victims, should be strengthened. Many of the services offered to abused women fail to meet the required standards and often expose women to second-degree trauma. Studies have shown that empowering victims is one of the key solutions. Al-Jamaah's first call to this government is to be more proactive by putting strategies in place to stop crime in its tracks and to fully implement the aims and objectives of the National Policy Guidelines for Victim Empowerment. Last but not least, Al-Jamaah extends its gratitude to the former Minister of Home Affairs in the 6th Parliament and the Department for the pertinent role they play to ensure that the nikah certificate can now be recorded on South Africa's national population registration as a Muslim certificate. When Al-Jamaah's leader, Honourable Hanif Hendricks, now Deputy Minister of Social Development, submitted his private bill on the registration of Muslim marriages, one of the big concerns was that non-registration of Muslim marriages denied Muslim women their rights, causing them tremendous hardships and contributed to gender-based violence. Honourable members, no politicking. Enough talk. We need action. 16 days of activism has to be 365 days a year. And we are all duty bound.
Honourable Saleh.
Thank you.
Is there a speaker on behalf of the NCC? The PAC? Honourable Mahlatsi, are you participating? Please come to the podium.
Thank you, Chairperson. Hordes of Africa. The stats that you are using or we are using in this house is not a true reflection of a reality. And we must be honest, because it's based on the case system, which include cases that are reported. What about the cases that are not reported? For an example, disabled women who are unable to go and open cases, or some of them are depending on the perpetrators. Mafrika, what about the spouses of senior government officials who are afraid to report their partners because they know the power they hold? Mafrika, what about the spouses of illegal foreigners who are here in South Africa, who are abused daily, who cannot report these cases because themselves are not legal in the country? Let's face reality. But my recommendation to SAPS is that you don't have to go and look for money. Within SAPS, go and identify academics within SAPS and invest on research, so that the stats that we are working with, it's a reality. So what we are doing now is just a show, because it's not true. So, as UAT, we ascribe to the spirit of Ubuntu, which is godliness. It talks to family values. And what is our duties as men? Remember, women are doing all these things. They are working, bazalela bantwana, and they look after children, they cook for us. So there's only one thing that we must do as men, is to provide security, is to love our partners, is to provide shelter, food, basic things. But now, the question I want to ask Africans. No, nemali ne? Nethanda imali. No. To close this, I'll close it, Africa, Mara. As long as a man, you are telling me to close it, the message went in. As long as the message went in, I don't have a problem with you. I can close it, Africa. But I want to ask one question, moreover, to Africans. Why did we move away from the traditional African values, family values? Ho tla jwang ebe re tlwelletse bo Africa ba rona ra yo adopta ntho tse hole le rona ka jeku re kedikedi dinthong tsa gender based violence.
Thank you, Honorable Mahlatsi. Your time has now expired. The next speaker is the Honorable Schikkerling.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, honorable members. A thief in the night operates in the darkness, moving without being seen, and often leaves no immediate trace of their presence. Similarly, gender-based violence often operates in secrecy, hidden from public view and from the awareness of even our close friends and family. Victims may live in fear, shame, and isolation, afraid to speak out, or seek help because of societal stigma, threats from the abuser, or fear of not being believed. In many cultures, GBV is normalized, with harmful gender stereotypes and rigid gender roles perpetuating cycles of violence and silence. Like a thief, GBV strikes unexpectedly, and its effects are often felt long after the act itself. It is one of the most targeted forms of bullying in the world. Today, Parliament reflects on the lasting effect of that this thief leaves in its wake. The 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children in South Africa. This critical initiative calls for an end to gender-based violence and emphasizes the paramount importance of the rights of women and children everywhere to be safe in their homes and in their communities. We stand here today and talk about what we can do to end this scourge against the vulnerable, or we can collectively take a united stance and stand together to find a way to prevent it. We must acknowledge that the roots of this violence are deeply intertwined with systemic issues such as poverty, inequality, and patriarchy. It is our collective responsibility to challenge these structures and bring real change. Education plays a pivotal role in this fight. By educating our communities and our children about gender equality and empowering survivors to speak out, we can change the mindset and cultivate a culture of respect, understanding, and accountability. In South Africa, the statistics are alarming, with a significant number of women and children experiencing serious violence on a daily basis, often leading to severe physical and psychological consequences. Individuals are targeted more often than not based on their age, gender, sexuality, or gender expression. We face these grave realities in our communities on a daily basis. Statistics show that our country has one of the highest rates of gender-based violence in the world. Every day, countless women and children are subjected to abuse, harassment, and violent rapes that often result in senseless murders. Between April and June of this year alone, 966 women and 314 children lost their lives to meaningless violence. To give you some perspective of what this means, 10 women will be killed today, nearly 150 will be violently assaulted, 5 children will barely escape their lives, and tragically 3 will die. These are our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, and friends. They are the furthest thing from numbers on a piece of paper. Each represents a life shattered, a potential extinguished, a family in mourning, and a future stolen. While this campaign raises awareness about the ongoing scourge of violence against our most vulnerable, awareness alone does not change deep-rooted societal norms or ensure accountability for perpetrators. Exposing this thief can only be effectively addressed through a whole-of-society approach where communities, government, and organizations work together to prevent harm, support survivors, and challenge the systemic inequalities that perpetuate this violence. Concerns about the campaign becoming a performative exercise rather than leading to concrete actions has been raised several times in the past. Without substantial policy changes, an active push to reform, and ensuring that resources are allocated to support victims and their families, this vital initiative risks becoming just another annual event without any lasting impact. As we embark on these 16 days of activism, let us engage in conversations that may be uncomfortable but are necessary. Let's take this thief head on. Let us challenge ourselves and others to speak out against violence and discrimination. Use your voice to empower those who feel powerless, to uplift those that have been silenced. Sexual and domestic violence against men in South Africa is not a new phenomenon in our society. It is, however, a phenomenon that is largely not spoken about due to victims fearing the social stigma surrounding these crimes. So they keep silent. These crimes are left unreported, and the survivors invariably end up not receiving the support they need, victimizing them all over again. In fact, the underreporting of crimes against women and children remains a significant challenge. We must ensure that our law enforcement agencies are not only capable of investigating these crimes and bringing perpetrators to book, but also that officers are trained and equipped to guide survivors through the most traumatic experiences of their lives. Let us not forget the importance of support systems. Survivors of violence must always know that they are not alone. We must strengthen our services, hotline, shelters, counseling, and legal assistance to ensure that the help is accessible and compassionate. I stand here not only to commemorate the lives lost and affected by violence, but also to honor the resilience and strength of those who continue to fight for justice and equality. Together we can break the silence. In closing, let us remember that activism is not just a 16-day event. It is a lifelong commitment. May these days inspire us to act, to educate, and to advocate, not just during this time, but every day of the year. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Chauke is now recognized as the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honourable members and fellow South Africans. I stand before you to come and commemorate the 16 days of activism where we come together collectively as South Africans to stand against violence against women and children. Most often we find that perpetrators are often left behind when we have intervention programs to ensure that we're able to diagnose the challenges that persist. As the African National Congress, as we have always uttered and championed, was to ensure the protection of women and children by creating economic opportunities, but by forging forward legislative frameworks and policies that seek to empower and enhance the lives of the most vulnerable. Often what we have also found as the African National Congress is that in society, we must ensure that the most vulnerable must be protected. We look at women with disabilities, children with disabilities, and overall persons with disabilities and the LGBTQAI+. It is part of our mandate or agenda as the African National Congress to ensure that no South African is out of the reach of enabling and powerful information and resources, especially when it comes to tackling gender-based violence and femicide. Now, fellow South Africans and honorable members, It's also highly important to emphasize that, yes, we know that there are underreportings that are taking place, and this requires active citizenship to take place. This requires for us to encourage our communities, community members, leaders, to come collectively and report these cases. In the African National Congress, we have a program called Molo Makhelwane. This seeks to foster social cohesion, and this should be implemented across all board, irrespective of the political party you are part of. Because if we want to really combat gender-based violence and violence against women, children, and the most vulnerable, it will require for us to really bridge to really foster social cohesion and to ensure that our communities are collectively working together and are taking accountability and responsibility. Now, honorable members, the honorable member from the EFF, you did mention that the former HOD in the Eastern Cape has not yet been suspended. He has been suspended, and the case is currently under investigations. The African National Congress takes such cases and offenses seriously. We will make sure that it is thoroughly followed, but we assure South Africans that as the African National Congress, we put ourselves forward to ensuring the protection of the most vulnerable and making sure that perpetrators account and law takes its place.
Honourable member, please just take a pause for a moment. Honourable member, why are you rising?
Thank you, House Chair. There's a silly guy over there that is pointing at me. Nevertheless, exactly. House Chair, the lady on the podium is misleading the House. The National Chair did say, the National Chair did say that the HOD is suspended. He must be fired without pay.
Yeah, thank you.
And not only suspended with a paycheck.
Honourable member.
That is what we were saying.
Thank you, honourable
Sometimes
member.
just listen and don't listen to just one.
Honourable member, that's not a point of order, but my recollection as it is, that's not, please take your seat, that's not a point of order, but my recollection as it is that the words indefinite leave was used. So this is an answer to that statement. Honourable member on the podium, please continue.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. As we have said, as the African National Congress, we want to ensure that perpetrators are brought to serve their time, and we want to ensure that we protect our communities. I also want to re-emphasize the importance of us as honourable members, as public representatives, to ensuring that we put the plight of women and children and persons with disabilities, the most vulnerable, before our own political agenda, but come collectively together to share and explore innovative ideas to really address the issue. Our President, Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, had indicated that gender-based violence is one of the most prominent and scary states that we find ourselves in South Africa. Also naming it a national crisis. This national crisis is not politically based, but goes to say each and every single one of us as South Africans, we need to take an active role, but play our role as well in our society. We say to entities, government institutions, it is important for us to see collaboration taking place in order for us to really address the needs of our people. We need to ensure that when we go out in our communities, we reinforce the work that is being done by government, by us going and educating our community members. Also, one thing that we need to re-emphasize, we've got the Commission on Gender-Based Violence, and also we've got the CGE that ensures gender equality. CGE, yes, has been put under scrutiny, but we say by reinforcing their efforts, we can see much and greater progress. Now, when we say we need to write policies and legislative frameworks that ensure the protection of the most vulnerable against gender-based violence and femicide, I firmly believe that we do not need to rewrite the wheel, but need to reinforce and ensure adequate implementation that is sustainable. Rewriting the wheel will not give us any different results, but policies already exist. We need to go back to the drawing board and say, how do we ensure the successful implementation? Not only that, how do we engage and educate society on the laws that are put in place to protect them? Now, there's a report that has also come out regarding employment stats. Apologies for that. Employment stats. The unemployment rate has dropped by 1.4%. This has just come out today, which is a success. Yes, we have not reached the target of ensuring that unemployment has been eradicated completely, but we must say this is an achievement nonetheless and work even harder. We know 290,400 people have been employed in comparison to the second quarter in this third quarter. This is an achievement. Now, we must say as government, we know then and understand that through economic empowerment and emancipation, therefore we'll be able to address issues of abuse. Once a woman has been empowered and has the necessary skills and tools, they're able to stand on their own. A boy child who is empowered and has been guided with positive masculinity is one who becomes an outstanding citizen. The African National Congress has led a program on adopting a boy child, where we want to ensure that we are raising men, boys who are responsible citizens of this country. We want to ensure that our girls understand their role and responsibility and how this country and the Constitution protects and empowers them to reach for the stars. In fact, I always say, the sky is not the limit. It's no longer the limit. And therefore, this is a principle that we need to adopt. Our children need to be their skills need to be harnessed. We need to ensure that they are protected. We need to ensure that our academic institutions reinforce the work of government by educating our young girls and boys to easily identify where there are
Honourable
issues
Member, unfortunately, your time is now expired.
Thank you so much, honourable members and chairperson.
Honourable members, that concludes this debate. Proceedings will now be suspended until 2 o'clock. Members are reminded that bells will be rung to alert members to the resumption of business. Business is suspended.
And it almost hurt you. No, you had your foot out.
Yeah, but